Hi, Shiva.
Hi, can
Can
you
you
hear
hear?
me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
Loud
great.
and clear.
Okay, let me.
Okay, great to have you back, Shiva, with us to share your views at reInvent.
Thank you. Thank you for having me once again. It's great to be here.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell the audience a little bit about the topic you're speaking about and who you are, and you can prepare anything that you have. So we have with us our last speaker for day 2 of this reInvent conference. We have Shiva Parasram. He is the founder of CFSI based in Trinidad and Tobago. He's going to be talking about purple teaming, the best of red and blue team skill sets. A little bit about Shiva. Shiva is the executive director and CISO of the Computer Forensic and Security Institute, which specializes in penetration testing, forensics, and advanced cybersecurity training. He has actively been in the field of cybersecurity since 2004 and possesses an MSc in network security from Anglia Ruskin University with a distinction and has over 13 international certifications in cybersecurity and networking. He is a certified cybersecurity and forensics instructor and has trained hundreds in the fields of penetration testing, cybersecurity, forensics, and network throughout the Caribbean over the past 16 years. He is currently partnered with international companies including Fujitsu as the lead trainer for advanced cybersecurity courses facilitated by CFSI. Shiva is also the author of 3 books from Packt Publishing, including Digital Forensics with Kali Linux, first and second editions, and Kali Linux, Assuring Security by Penetration Testing, the 4th edition. He has delivered workshops, lectures, and keynote speeches regionally for ISACA, Caribbean universities, and colleges, the Trinidad and Tobago Law Associations, and many other institutions. So, with that, over to you, Shiva. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to your session. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Aditya. Thanks to everyone on the Rocheston team, Haja, everyone involved, Sumi, Sanchita, Aditya, the entire team that put this wonderful conference together. Again, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm pretty excited to end it all off. We had some pretty amazing presentations so far. Let me just thank the other speakers there. A lot of stuff has already been covered, which is great. So what I would like to talk to you all about today is purple teaming, which is the best of both skill sets, because we've heard a lot about pen testing and incident response and so on, especially that last presentation, last couple, I should say. And what Pooja mentioned, maybe it's time to rethink some Active Directory stuff, which I am in full agreement with. We come across a lot of penetration tests where, yes, you are focused on what's going on from an external perspective, but what about internally? I mean, it's just my personal opinion, but the majority of attacks would come from some sort of weaker or weakest link inside the organization. All right, so let's get to it, right? Purple teaming, best of both skill sets. Just to break the ice a bit. Hi, my name is Shiva and I hack stuff. Actually, I have a team and we hack stuff together with permission, of course. Okay. So a little background, again, just to add to what Aditya said. Yeah, I'm the founder and director of the Computer Forensics and Security Institute, where we perform vulnerability assessments, penetration testing. I'm a cybersecurity author, lecturer. CFSI is also a Rocheston Training Center and Institute, where we offer the Rocheston certified RCCE and all these top-notch industry certifications. Right, we're also consultants and partners for PTRMS in Canada and Foresight Technologies as well in Trinidad. A couple of my publications, as Aditya mentioned, I've written a couple books on digital forensics using Kali Linux. I mean, you don't have to use Kali Linux for digital forensics. I mean, Linux in general, you have so many great tools out there. Also, Assuring Pen Testing, that was also co-written with 2 of my team members, Damien Boudou and Mr. Alex Sam, both of Trinidad. This is the 4th edition that we put together not too long ago. All right, and before we begin, I'd love to just say hello to my team, my purple team, because without these guys, we would not be able to do and offer all the great services that we do. Alex, Deodat, Joel, Damien, Jason, Leslie, Ronnie, and Shivanan. We we all started off as either the red team or the blue team, but within recent years, this is where we decided, okay, we need to combine our skills together and our skill sets and form a purple team, which is actually the best of both worlds. There is a lot of work that has to go into upgrading your skill sets, into actually making your way into part of a purple team. Because, I mean, for those of you all that may be trying to get into the field of pen testing or are already in the field, I don't have to explain to you all exactly how much work goes into trying to understand all of these the amount of exploits that we see these days, recently with SolarWinds. Then we go about a ransomware and botnets in Trinidad and the Caribbean. The Emonet botnet has once again made its way here, and it's a bit terrifying, to be honest. But it's because it's just so much knowledge that has to go into the research in particular, trying to understand the proof of concept, trying to replicate the proof of concept, and then of course you have to go ahead and actually execute these in assessments, vulnerability assessments, penetration tests, and this is where the additional skill comes in. This is where you level up as an incident responder, digital forensics investigator. It goes hand in hand, which is why I think that the purple team would be more relevant in times to come, because it's not about just discovering what is there and letting your company or your clients know about what may exist, but it's also about you putting things in place. So, for example, a lot of companies would have the business continuity plan. Part of the business continuity plan is also um, the the crisis management, or effective crisis communication. For example, we have a breach. We discovered a breach, or discovered a breach has happened, or something has happened in particular. How do we go about, with mitigation and implementing solutions and trying to see if, or trying to find a way to ensure that these things don't happen anymore? All right, so are we still going to assume that technology will protect us from all of these threats that we've seen, especially within 2020? 2020 was such an interesting year, for lack of better words. It was a very frustrating year for most of us, and I hope everyone is safe out there, of course. But are we still assuming that we are going to be protected by firewalls, UTMs, intrusion, and endpoint detection, IPS, IDS? But can we afford to not have these things in place? I don't think we can any longer. We've seen over even the last decade, even before, maybe let's say around from 2007 up to recently, that it's not going to get any better in terms of cybersecurity. Gone are the days where you could have probably just decided to run your corporate environment on maybe a random or generic antivirus solution. And maybe have some simple monitoring solution. It's way more than that now, and a lot of it actually has to do with training to keep you to ensure your company has a robust security posture, I should say. It involves a lot of staff training and a lot of not just technical staff, obviously. I mean, yes, you can afford your staff some excellent training. You could probably reach out to Rocheston as well and look at the RCCE training and what have you there, which it has some very, very intense modules into making you a penetration tester as well. But it also goes to regular staff training, meaning non-technical staff, simple awareness programs, I should say, where you have sessions on how to look out for phishing emails, what are the dangers, what can happen via phishing email. For example, in Trinidad, we had a huge breach late last year with a very large conglomerate in the Caribbean that experienced a ransomware attack, and it took them quite a while to get back on track. So part of their business continuity plan would have gone into effect, not part, but the entire business continuity plan and framework would have gone into effect. And like I mentioned previously, a big part of the BCP, or business continuity plan, now is effective crisis management and crisis communication. When they when a breach has occurred again, do we have things in place? For example, if you have a fire drill, we all have fire drills with health and safety officers in organizations, and that is practiced regularly. And there is a proper chain of command and communication as we proceed. Who are the fire wardens? What are the proper procedures that we should follow in an orderly fashion? Don't panic, but be sure that this person then escalates it to this person and works with a particular group. So this is where the red and the blue teams come together. It's no longer about just identifying a threat and pointing out these threats, but what are we doing about mitigation, right? About ensuring that the services offered are still up and running, right? Should your Active Directory get hit, for example, with ransomware or something like that, do we pay the ransomware? Do we launch investigations? Who do we contact? Are there people in governments, whether it be the CERTs or the CSERTs? I know in Trinidad we have a CSERT that does some pretty good work as well. But I would say that it isn't just about the red and the blue team anymore. It's about user awareness. You have so many companies out there that do not invest in user awareness training as well. So I haven't seen any comments there that Alex Sam actually put that user awareness is the weakest link, and I tend to agree with that. Right? So we can't just assume that technology will protect us anymore, that the firewalls and the honeypots, if in use at all, we just cannot make that assumption, because we have to assume that our company is just as protected, or we have to ensure, I should say, that our company and our clients are just as protected, even on your home networks, on the inside as well as the outside. So it's not good enough to just have a firewall. We need to start looking at threat modeling and threat intelligence and things like that. All right, so with the purple team, we have the offensive team, or the red team, and we have the defensive team, which is the blue team, combined. And of course, with our primary colors, when you mix the red and the blue, you actually get purple. All right, so the purple team is actually best of both worlds, where we have the offensive side and we also have the defensive side. So nowadays, I mean, yes, you can call yourself a security specialist. There are so many titles. The title does not exactly matter, because even if you have all the certification in the world, it eventually comes down to what you are, what are your capabilities, what are you capable of doing. So in today's talk, this is what I want to actually push a bit. To get into the purple side, yes, there are a couple tools that you could start off for the red team and the blue team, and it's free tools. There are free tools that you could use. They are all available in different varieties of Linux. Some of them are available on Windows. You don't have to purchase commercial tools until you are sure of a tool that you would like to go with, or a company that you would like to subscribe to. But that's where we will actually focus on today. Right, so yeah, this is where we rely on, in purple teams, we rely on the assets with the following skills. So the assets in particular that I'm referring to would be your human assets and your human resources, because for the purple team, we need persons with the following skill sets, which would be that they must be efficient in vulnerability assessment, threat intelligence, threat hunting, penetration testing or pen testing, incident response, and digital forensics. Incident response would be, for example, even in the hospitals and with the paramedics and so on, they are incident. So would have a proper communication plan and crisis management plan, proper procedures to follow so that they would respond to a particular incident when called upon. And within your team or within companies as well, you don't have to have persons with all of these skill sets being incident responders. Incident responders could sometimes be the persons who are just there, first of all, to ensure that, let's say that they suspect a laptop, a desktop, a server, or something like that, to maybe have been breached. Who are the first persons that would respond? Is it the IT manager? Is it someone from HR? Is it someone technical? It's a mix of talent that you have there. Digital forensics, on the other hand, this is where you need to have the proper training and skill set, because with digital forensics, remember, we're dealing with data that could sometimes be highly volatile. If you have a lot of information stored in RAM and the memory of the computer, remember, this is highly volatile information. If the machines are restarted, for example, it could easily be lost, whether maybe it's a battery failure or power failure, essentially electrical loss of electrical charge to your memory modules that just wipes everything as it goes along. So it's what we would like to do is have some sort of efficient threat response. So this is where, okay, suppose we have, let's say it's a routine vulnerability assessment, which leads to a penetration test. Maybe during your vulnerability assessment, as a lot of the speakers have focused on previously, you've discovered that, let's say you're using OpenVAS or Nessus or millions of the tools out there that can do vulnerability assessments. But you discover that maybe that there's a threat that has a medium or a high rating. And then from there, you decide to escalate it a bit and let's say perhaps perform penetration testing on top of it. And you do realize that there is something that could be exploited, which leads to a large threat to the organization. And of course, this is where a little bit of risk management and risk assessment would come in as well. So we need to make sure that we have an effective plan in terms of, okay, so we've discovered something. What is the response to this threat now? How often are our networks assessed? You'd find that a lot of companies may probably want to do some threat assessment, vulnerability assessments, pen testing, whichever they decide on, maybe every 6 months, maybe annually. Right? Is that good enough? We can't say, because remember, there are a lot of zero-day attacks which would just come out of the blue, and your vulnerability assessment and pen test is only good up until the point at which it was conducted. After you've finished scanning and pen testing, you have no idea what can be released a minute, an hour, a day, a week, a month after that. So vulnerability assessments, I mean, depending on the finances, depending on the priority with the business drivers, the drivers within the company, or the clients, I should say, if it can be done at least once every 2 months, maybe, or after every update, I would say regularly. Once every 6 months for a vulnerability assessment is probably too little. All right. Also, how often is the staff trained or given the opportunity to pursue training and certification? Does your IT department have a budget where finances are allocated? And remember, yes, it is about personal growth as well. But I think from personal experience, what I've seen inside companies is that the companies that allocate the finances and the budget to allow their IT staff, especially the security admins, network admins, sysadmins, when they allow them the ability to not just do training of what the company would provide to all, but maybe approach the company and say, okay, well, this is what I think I want to pursue a seminar, a workshop, a conference, etc., as it may be. This is a great way to keep employees focused. You know, maybe sponsor them some training at least every 6 months to a year. Ask them what type of training they would like to have. And that day would help them focus on the other points that I have listed there. For example, how are your breaches detected? Is it through appliances? Is it through managed security? Is it through in-house testing? Importantly, is there a documented and efficiently tested incident response plan? What I would suggest is maybe you do some searches for some blue team frameworks, for example, and this is where you could even combine a red team framework together with a blue team framework. Of course, if you look at frameworks from NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, they have so many available plans and frameworks. You can reach out to your local CCERT or CERT. There are so many different types of documentation out there that you could use. Of course, every company, every client, every household would have different needs. So you don't necessarily have to have a blue team response, red team framework if it's just your personal network. But why not? Maybe get into the practice. Maybe start documenting. Maybe start putting together your own type of framework based on your own types of experience. All right. And are there separate roles between red and blue teams? Yes, definitely. The red team, as we heard a lot of the presenters mentioned so far, the red team, they focus a lot on the actual vulnerabilities, the exploits, and the threats. And the blue teams would be about response to these threats that were found, the breaches, business continuity. Remember, that is what it is about, because if your Active Directory goes down, if your email servers go down, if your payment portals go down, right? And how is this communicated? Do you just panic? Does someone panic and just call the IT manager, or is there some sort? Was there any awareness training done? All staff in general, for example, within a company, aware of what should be done. Just as in a fire drill, we know, for example, where the muster points are supposed to be. There are signs all over the railing saying, please use XYZ. There are a lot of memes and stuff that you would see with cut cable to activate firewall, for example. But the awareness training is what is very important, because when something happens, yes, you have firewalls, you have the team that you could call out and so on, but is everyone aware of the rules and the protocols that should be followed? Um, to effectively communicate what has happened, and more importantly, to actually activate the blue team or the response plan. So this is where, when it's actually the skill sets are actually combined, it makes for a very effective team and very efficient management. All right. So this is why we need to make sure that security awareness and security training is delivered. Right. So for example, we have a ransomware scenario. Let's say that company XYZ has been hit with the Revil or Revil ransomware, however you would like to pronounce it. However, they were not aware of the attack until weeks later, which has actually happened in real life scenarios that I have been called in to investigate. The ransom was not paid, but the return to normal operations took 3 weeks after the actual breach was discovered. Not after the breach, but after the discovery of the breach. So what could have been done to either prevent the attack from happening and to also speed up the restoration process? This is open discussion. This is just this is along the lines that we need to be thinking. This is what we need to ask ourselves, because sometimes you may not be aware because your firewall does not show in the logs, for example, the analyzers. It may not show that something has happened. You did not receive any emails, any text messages. You've done threat hunting and you've looked through your logs and set filters, and you haven't seen anything from the firewall side, but maybe internally, someone may have just brought a flash drive, plugged in the flash drive, or maybe they found a flash drive in the car park and decided to stick it in their work laptop and say, well, let me see if this belongs to someone within the company, right? Again, these are things that awareness training should teach everyone in staff, whether it be from top C-level management all the way down below to maybe trainees and so on. But this is actually a real life scenario that I've had many discussions with that happened within the Caribbean. Could anything have been done to prevent the attack? Yes, it depends on how the attack actually came in and was, actually the infection, I should say, actually took place or transpired within the organization. For a lot of companies, again, it all goes back to the firewall. They assume that they have a firewall, but is the firewall updated? Remember, firewalls as well, they would have their own firmware, which you would need to upgrade. For example, if you look at the Cisco, FortiGate, Checkpoint, whoever you have out there, they would have their own firmware as well. So just as your laptops and desktops would need to update from time to time, all of these things need to also be done, because you may realize that, okay, you're paying for a subscription for firewall services, managed subscription services. Let's say that it's locally hosted, for example, on your end, but you are on version 3, which might be okay. But let's say that their time goes by so quickly and they reach up to version 6. Obviously, version 6 will have a lot of new features. They will have a lot of patches. So just as you would upgrade anything, your security appliances as well would need to be upgraded, right? And your red team and your blue team does not need to be a huge team, but you should have a proper and effective communication plan. It does depend on the size of the organization itself, but I know of organizations that, let's say they have about 300 to 600 employees, and maybe their their purple team in particular, which is a combination of the red and blue team, is maybe about 3 to 5 people. So it really depends on the focus that you have, but I would encourage organizations to please ensure that your resources themselves determine, your red and blue or purple team personnel determine if they can handle the size of the organization, the amount of data that travels through the organization. It goes without saying, IT people, especially in cybersecurity, we are overworked, right? So underpaid, I'm not sure. but we are overworked. It is a lot of work. It is a highly stressful job. Even the CISOs would know that this is very stressful. If you look up the usual stint, I would say, of a CISO within an organization, it may be 1 to 2 years because it's a very stressful job. And CISOs, the minute there's a breach, usually CISOs would step down. And no matter how secure you think your organization is, like I said, we have zero-day attacks. So anything could happen after that initial vulnerability scan or pen test. I'm seeing a lot of debate on LinkedIn, and you all can find me on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to reach me. Um, but there's a lot of debates on LinkedIn, sorry, about penetration tests after it's being done. Should the penetration testing company or the penetration testers guarantee that a breach will not happen up to a year after the pen test is completed? That is about as ridiculous as a purple unicorn. Because I don't think it's possible to offer that. Because, like I said, with a zero-day attack, you have no idea when a zero-day attack will occur. It could be, and is it out there and has it been reported? Do we even know about it? How long after the attack was released or the exploit was released do the security researchers even discover this? All right. So to say that red teams, blue teams, purple teams can actually guarantee that your network is secure, we can up to a specific point, meaning that maybe at that point in time, based on the tools that were used, we did not discover any. We did not find any vulnerabilities or threats that could be exploited, etc. But right after that scan is completed, we just don't know. All right, so the purple team assets and resources, they are the ones that should be able to identify the threats, evaluate the risk, perform the threat hunting, the penetration testing. But you you need to also be proficient in as I mentioned, the threat response, the incident management, digital forensics, malware and artifact analysis. Think about it from the perspective of something inside your a laptop, for example, inside your organization was infected. Um, the blue team, for example, what they would have to do is actually go ahead and acquire the RAM or the memory and then do so in a forensic manner to make sure it's a forensically sound investigation, as if they were doing it for the police service or something like that as well. And make sure that, importantly, why you would like to make the same approach or take the same approach as a professional blue team or professional forensic investigator is just because of one thing. You need to maintain the integrity of the data, right? So it's not compromised in any way. So the purple team skills, this is what it would involve, where you have a perfect combination of the red team and the blue team. This is where your purple team skills come in. However, to get your purple team up to mark where they are an efficient purple team, it is going to take a while because your resources that may have done penetration testing, they may not be familiar with the blue team. They might have an idea, but are they efficient in it? Are they trained in it? Do they have experience? Are you providing some sort of room for them to um, practice? Is there a lab environment, right? Is it part of a framework, for example? So to get you all started on a couple tools that we could look at, we have typical tools. No, these are in particular open source tools. For red teams, everyone would have their preference, right? So I'm not trying to single out anyone, but I'm just trying to expose those of you that may be trying to put together a purple team. Maybe some of the tools that you could be exposed to or expose your team to. So typically we have operating systems such as Kali Linux, Parrot OS, Black Arch Linux, or even basic Ubuntu, because a lot of the tools that you will be using in Linux, they would run on any version. I mean, we have so many different flavors of Linux out there. There are a few tools that you would find that you have on Windows. I believe, though, that the majority of tools for Windows, they would be commercial, meaning that you have to pay for these tools apart from, let's say, Autopsy or something like that. All right. So for the red team, or the operating systems that would be preferred by the red team, yes, you have Kali Linux, Parrot OS, Black Arch, Ubuntu. For the blue team in particular, what I use in particular would be there is a newer type of operating system with forensics tools called CSI Linux. It's free. Kane is also free. Ubuntu is free. You have a lot of commercial forensics tools, as I mentioned, for Windows, such as um, FTK and Belkasoft and Access Data stuff, Encase, Cellbrite, so many tools out there. So just to give you an idea of some of the tools that we have out there. Here's a list of some of the well, a graphic of some of the common blue team tools that you have out there: Paladin, Kane, X-Rays Forensics, Autopsy, Wireshark. Wireshark should be pretty familiar. Network Miner makes life very simple because it analyzes packet captures done by Wireshark. The SANS, SIFT Workstation, ProDiscover, Volatility Framework. I am a huge fan of the Volatility Framework because if ever I need to work on an investigation to acquire a forensic dump of memory of exactly what's happening inside your RAM and your paging file, for example, I would use a tool like perhaps DD inside Linux, or maybe even Belkasoft, RAM Capturer, FTK, Imager, just to image the memory and then import that into the volatility framework, which does some amazing analysis using maybe well over 100 plugins for analysis in particular. Right, so there are a lot of tools. I don't think there's any right and wrong tool per se. What I would advise is that you perhaps go through a couple of them just to start with, and maybe as you go along, you do your research and see what works well with you or for you, right? So the red team viewers of the conference, feel free to try out some of the blue team tools. For the blue team viewers, feel free to try out some of the red team tools, which we'll have a look at now. So for example, this is the Kane operating system, right? You can boot it from a CD, a DVD, a flash drive. You can run it on a virtual machine. It is totally up to you. I actually have the majority of the forensics tools, the forensics operating systems on brand new USB drives and SD cards and so on, which makes it pretty easy for me to just approach a workstation, a server, a laptop, even mobile devices, and easily perform acquisition or forensic acquisition, or even do incident response to breaches. So in Kane, the majority of tools that are in Kane, they are for forensics and incident response. Kane, I think now is up to either version 11 or version 12. So even in the menu, if you all can see it on screen there, in the forensics tools, you have a lot of subcategories there for forensic analysis, database analysis, disks, malware, memory. And again, let me just repeat that the majority of tools that you would find in Kane and in CSI Linux and Ubuntu and Kali and what have you, they are all Linux tools. So if you use any version of Linux, it should be very easy to clone these tools into whatever version of Linux you are currently using. I mean, I'm a huge fan of GitHub. That's where we find everything, and we can clone everything from GitHub into your version of Linux per se. All right, so this is Kane. And then we move on to the CSI Linux interface here. Just to give you all an idea, you know, that you have a lot of great tools. I love CSI Linux. It's relatively new. It's probably only like about two or 3 years old. It was developed by the cyber warfare team under, I believe, Mr. Jeremy Martin. You can also find Jeremy Martin on LinkedIn. Very easy to talk to and approach if you have any questions as well. And it's organized. There are a lot of tools that inside of CSI Linux that I have not seen inside some of the other operating systems that I use for forensics and incident response. So for example, here in the subcategories, you have secure communications, encryption, dark web investigations. I saw a meme and a joke on Facebook, I believe, where a guy said he forgot his password. So he's going to go on the dark web to see if he can recover his password if it was out there on the dark web. All right, but I mean, it is funny, but it's also very true. We have no clue as to what exists on the dark web. So penetration testing itself and red team should also get into dark web investigations. It is a very dangerous place. I do not advise going onto the dark web If you are not sure about it, I do not advise going onto the dark web if you just would like to do some research. If that is the case, please be very secure, very safe. Use a VPN. Try not to have, don't have any personal information on the machine that you are using to visit the dark web. If you do not have reason to go to the dark web, I do not recommend that you go on the dark web. There are many instances of persons visiting the dark web and also getting hacked at the same time. Right, so let's try not to do too much. But in red team and vulnerability assessments, I think it's essential that you have either access to a resource that would go onto the dark web for you. There are lots of companies that do that for you. If you can do it yourself, that is fine, but it needs to be done because we're not sure about what breach might have occurred. And I mean, it would really be something if you discover that a breach about your company, while unknown to you, is actually on the dark web, and that has happened. Right, so that has to actually be included, I would say, in penetration testings, and also be included as part of your findings on a penetration testing report as well. So I'm seeing someone that said, what do you consider to be good practice examples for pen test findings report? Also, how do you make the report understandable for non-technical persons? I'm not sure if Alex could probably reply to this as well, but especially in report findings and stuff, it's even for forensics, whether it be pen testing, forensics, red team, blue team, or purple team report. It's always important to make sure that the executive summary explains in layman's terms maybe what was found, maybe the a risk rating on the overall assessment, the security posture of the organization, and puts it more into layman's terms that regular business people and stakeholders could understand. And then, of course, after that, well, then you have the initial and overall report findings and your appendices where you would have your technical information in particular. Right, and then we have a favorite tool here of a lot of people called Kali Linux. I have a special liking for Kali Linux. Well, I wrote 3 books on Kali Linux, but the tools within Kali Linux, like I said, you could actually install them in any flavor of Unix out there. I don't recommend using Kali Linux for forensics anymore in particular. If you just happen to have Kali and you would like to try out some of the tools inside of there, that is fine. But over the years, Kali Linux has been more of a pen testing type tool together with Parrot OS, Black Arch, and these. And it's made a lot of significant progress over the years. But for forensics and so on, yes, you can have this there, but I would recommend going with as a purple team, maybe try or a more of a blue team. Stick with Deft Linux or Kane or CSI Linux. CSI Linux. It does require a lot of resources, but the thing is, if for those of you all that are penetration testers or do vulnerability assessments and forensic investigations, you would understand when I say that 32 gigabytes of RAM is probably just enough. Sometimes you may need up to 64 gigabytes of RAM, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a machine with 8 gigs of RAM and at least start from there, especially if you're just trying to get into these areas, these very niche areas, I should say. All right, so let's look at some tools on both sides. I have some screenshots of a couple of these tools here, just to maybe sort of get you all introduced to it, so that it wouldn't be completely new to some of you all that are not familiar with some of the red team tools, as well as some of you all that may not be familiar with the blue team tools. All right, so usually it when you red team, anyone from a red team, a pen tester, a security researcher, they would usually tell you that you need to follow either some sort of methodology, some sort of pen testing or red team methodology, where you would perhaps start off doing a lot of recon on your network and get your available information, then perhaps plan out your attacks and gain access. And then what is done after it? Is the exploit maintained? Is it a persistent threat, or is it the tracks are covered? What is even done after that? How is it communicated, right? And again, it goes back to the report as well, because while the technical persons would understand this or should understand it, the average person, the average business person, a lot of the managers and CISOs or CEOs, I should say, the C-level resources may not have or may not be as technically inclined as the assessment team. So If you're not sure about Shodan.io, you could probably just open up a browser right now and type Shodan.io and go to it. It's an IoT browser where, I mean, I don't think I have to explain the Internet of Things, but pretty much we have so many devices that are connected to the Internet, either for remote access. And remember now, during this pandemic, it's all about remote access, right? In a lot of countries, they're onto their second and third lockdowns. People only have to be out there when they need to be. So you will find that more and more devices are perhaps discoverable through the internet. And Shodan.io is actually one of these browsers. You can use it for free. You can register. The paid subscription is not bad, actually. I think for Black Friday, they usually have a sale for about maybe 5 to 10 US where you have lifetime access. As showed by one of our previous presenters as well, who did an Nmap scan and showed what ports were open. So with Shodan and Nmap, what we're doing is mostly just a little bit of recon. Now, these tools that I have here are by absolutely no means an extensive list of the tools that you will be using for assessments, whether it be for red team or as part of the purple team. These are just some that you may want to get yourself introduced to, especially if you're on a blue team and trying to figure out what to get on, what to learn or have experience in, or if you're just getting started on the whole. Right, these are some of them that you can look into. Right, the Greenbone and OpenVAS. This is an open source vulnerability assessment scanner, and I highly recommend it. What I don't usually use just one vulnerability assessment scanner. I use perhaps 3 or 4 per assessment, just to ensure that the vulnerabilities found by one are also found by others. Because remember, we do have false positives and false negatives and so on. So we need to make sure of what is found. And then again, I need to make sure in my assessments also that the ratings of the vulnerabilities, because some may report a vulnerability as a medium vulnerability or a medium threat rating, and then another might put it as a high or hopefully not low, but it's more for comparison. And then when we pool all of this information together, for example, um, we would be able to better compare and have a better understanding. But it doesn't end there, because part of being a purple team and the benefit of being part of a purple team or having purple team skills is that you would now be able to sort of understand the impact on the organization, whether it be yours or whether it be your client's organization, and understand, okay, even though it's let's say a medium to a high vulnerability, what is the direct impact? Let's say that the actual severity against our organization or your client's organization. And if so, what is the response to this threat? And this is where the reports would differ as put together by a purple team rather than just a red team or just a blue team. If you do this in a red team, congratulations, that's actually quite awesome. Burp Suite for web vulnerability assessments is awesome. There's a community edition as well as a professional edition. The professional edition is one of the cheaper commercial tools. I think it's about 400 US around there. Wireshark, we should all be familiar with Wireshark, the network monitoring and packet capturing tool, which is free. Metasploit, again, you have a community version, which is used for exploitation. Aircrack, basic suite that comes with the majority of pen testing operating systems, but you can install all of these and try them out on your own. There are hundreds of tutorials out there on the net, as well as YouTube and all these other platforms that we have out there. For the blue team, however, some tools that we have DD, which is Linux. It's a command line tool. We have RAM Capturer from Belkasoft. We have FTK Imager from, FTK itself and Access Data. DD is more for Linux and Mac and so on, with RAM Capture and FTK Imager. These are for Windows machines. Volatility, which is what I love, is a memory dump analyzer. If you need to analyze what's happening in the RAM and the actual memory together with your paging file, perhaps you'd like to, let's say that you're doing investigations for a Trojan or ransomware, or even network connections, and you would like to actually see, let's say that you're tracing a botnet, for example, and you would like to actually see what communication was done. All of this information would be stored in the RAM as long as the computer is still on and you don't shut it off by mistake. So again, volatility is a great name because RAM, the data stored in RAM, is volatile and can be easily lost. Autopsy, Autopsy can be installed quite easily on Windows as well as Linux. I believe the Windows version may have a lot more features than the Linux version, but on the CSI Linux operating system, they have the most current GUI, graphical user interface, or the GUI interface for Autopsy there. Network Miner, what you can do with Network Miner is easily see data that was captured by Wireshark or any packet capture tool. It puts it into a very easily readable and identifiable graphical interface. So for those of you all that may be familiar with Wireshark, it's just a bunch of colors and protocols and packets, red, black, blue, whatever. And basic users may not be able to understand these, so you could also maybe install Network Miner. There is a good free version of Network Miner as well. All right, so let's put everything together as part of the Purple team and look at some of these tools in action. We're almost at the end of the presentation, actually. All right, so for Shodan that I spoke about, if you go to Shodan, for example, and it works with any browser, it is web-based, and I believe this was done from a free account, because I'm not seeing really. Oh, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't want to pay for it, you can sign up for the free registration, which would at least give you a bit more results. Maybe you might have 2 pages or 3 pages of results as opposed to the unregistered version, which maybe just gives you 1 page of results. But what this here is actually what the search query that they use. If you look at the search bar, it's the input is VSAT, right? So VSAT as in for the satellite communications that are used for boats and ships, satellite communications. So that's all they put inside of there, just VSAT. If you know your network IP range and so on, you could actually use things like the net block and the network IP range to see if, for example, any of your devices on a are actually found out there. For example, the team at CFSI would have done some assessments and so on, and we have found some very interesting things out there that should not be out there. The companies, of course, were made aware of these things, but again, it goes back to show the dangers of IoT and the Internet of Things. Yes, it can connect to the internet, but is it secured? What about all those devices that we have inside our homes? The Google Assistants, your phones, your Alexas, all of these devices. Can you scan those devices? Can you look at the firmware? Yes, firmware should be upgraded, but what about scanning those devices in terms of vulnerabilities? All right, so it just goes to show that these are things that we also have to take into consideration, because even inside the organization, we have the firewalls, we have IPS, we have IDS, we have external parties involved with subscriptions, monitoring everything. But what happens when that one client decides to come in and bring an Alexa to work, or some sort of compromised device, or even, let's say, a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino or something like that, and plug it into your network internally? That could be a game over scenario, because it means that someone is actually bringing something from the outside and circumventing every type of security mechanism or technology that you would have inside. Maybe your antivirus is your antivirus solution inside your organization. Is it managed? Is it individual? All of these are things that we should look at. Policies are great. I'm sure a lot of companies, a lot of you all would know about policies that you could have out there, but do the policies actually prevent any types of threats? Not if they aren't enforced. And how do you enforce policies? Again, this is where security awareness comes into play. You want to make sure that you have fun seminars, not just a seminar where you read through the policies and say you will be punished if you perhaps bring your own devices, plug them in, or you don't scan your flash drives. I would not say to go that route where people are punished, but maybe that you make them aware and you train them. So by doing that, what you do is that you improve or you implement a security culture inside your organization, where everyone is what we refer to as security minded in the organization. And they would and should have the organization's best interest at heart. So Shodan in particular is one of them that you can use. You can Google or use a whatever search engine, DuckDuckGo or something like that, to see what vulnerabilities might exist out there. Look at the filters that you could try out in Shodan, for example. Next up, we have OpenVAS at play here. So this is the result screen from an OpenVAS scan. And it's very simple to use. I mean, the filters may be a bit complex if you look at the filters there. Of course, this is where the skill set comes in and learning how to apply these filters and put together your reports, or maybe take these filters now and do a bit of research on the CVEs and the CVE ratings, and then from there look at proof of concept, if any, or you go ahead and you try out your penetration testing, assuming you have permission on your networks for these types of scans. So nicely with OpenVAS, you have the severity listed from 10, go all the way down. Of course, this was done on a highly vulnerable test machine at Rapid7. Rapid7 is the company that created the Metasploit framework, which is very impressive, that I'm sure most of you all might know about. All right, so this is one of the first steps as well in getting there, and it does not necessarily have to be a very invasive or intense. I mean, you do need to know your infrastructure, and you do need to know what exists, and you do need to know what could perhaps cause a denial of service attack, right? Because remember, you are effectively sort of stress testing your devices. So I would not recommend doing these scans at during production times and so on. But a vulnerability assessment and penetration tests, a lot of planning has to go into this. It is not where you just start OpenVAS one day and Nmap and all these things and say, okay, well, let me see what I find today. Yes, you can do that, but it's not recommended. I would recommend making sure that you have an entire network layout. You understand what is there, what could be affected, and if it is affected, where's the plan, right? Where's the remediation plan? And this is where, again, you get involved with the red team as well as the blue team, and you incorporate both. All right, so OpenVAS is a free scanner for vulnerability assessments that you have there. This is the Burp Suite Attack Surface Analysis. So this tool that we have up there is a very nice GUI tool called Burp Suite, where you can do manual analysis as well, especially for websites, web portals, external penetration tests. This screenshot was taken from portswigger.net, which is where you can go to find more about Burp Suite. They have entire training programs there for Burp Suite as well for their community edition. I do believe you may need to have the professional edition if you try to follow along with their labs. But if you are looking into web applications and web pen testing and so on, I do recommend that you look into Burp Suite, at least the community edition, right? And this is where you could analyze pretty much everything that you would find in terms of the components that are available to you in web applications. All right. I think I messed up. Yeah. There. Yeah, I put the same screenshot here twice. I'm sorry about that. This was actually supposed to be a Trojan creation using the Metasploit framework. So, for example, let's say that you've found out what IPs exist, what operating systems are run, and what devices are online, offline, what ports are open by using Nmap. And then you've run OpenVAS against those particular IPs to see particular vulnerabilities. And using those particular vulnerabilities, if I go back here for a second, for example, you see all of these that are high in particular. These would definitely be the ones that I would prioritize and try to resolve first or exploit first and see what can happen, what would be the impact on the organization or my system, for example. Now I can actually, for example, use Metasploit, and Metasploit has so many payloads that you can create. You can also create, for example, as I have on the right-hand side here, which is the wrong screenshot, and I do apologize again, but you can create Trojans, and not only for Windows devices, but even Android devices, FatRat, AndroRat, all of these. There are so many payloads that you could use for exploitation using even the free versions of Metasploit as well. I mean, obviously, if you have the paid versions of Metasploit and Expose framework and all of these, there are so many things that you can do with the professional version, but the community version is just as well. Should we stick to Metasploit alone for exploitation? No. You never stick to one tool because, I mean, think about it. All of the protection solutions, your antivirus and intrusion detection and protection, they would be aware of the payloads that could be issued by Metasploit and Burp Suite and a couple of these tools here. So while automated pen testing is becoming a thing, there are companies out there that are actually doing pen testing with AI. There's a company called Cysys as well that does internal pen testing, where you download the software, put it inside your organization. It does need like about 32 to 64 gigs of RAM, and they connect back to their software at their center, which uses AI to actually do the entire pen test for you. But I'm still leaning towards manual pen testing because you may discover a lot of stuff, a lot of vulnerabilities, and be able to actually do a lot more exploitation manually than with automated tools. But that is just my opinion. It's neither here nor there. It's just my opinion. All right. So now we move a little bit onto the forensic side of things. So remember when I was talking about, for example, if we have a situation where the there is some sort of breach, all right, by a laptop or something like that. For example, we could boot up into a Linux forensic station such as Keen, such as CFSI, a CSI Linux, using an SD card, or you can actually install tools because you definitely don't want to restart your machine. So for example, if you're using a Windows machine, you could also use Belkasoft RAM capture, which I do believe I have at some point. But for Linux machines as well, and Mac and what have you, you can use Guy Major. And as we can see on the screen here, it's very simple. Pretty much what you do is when you start up Guy Major, you click on scan, and it scans for all the attached storage media, whether it be hard drives, SD cards, external devices, whatever, even mobile devices. And all you really have to do is right click and choose acquire. And this creates a forensically sound image. Copying a file and creating a forensic copy of a file are two completely different things. A forensic copy of or forensic image of whether it be a hard drive, an entire device, a mobile device, laptop, desktop, even a folder. All right. Copy and paste, a lot of things would be missing from inside of there. But if we decide to do a forensic acquisition or forensic copy, what it means that we are taking every single sector and every single bit, every single cluster, whether good or bad, and copying it over. Because sometimes we may have hidden files, hidden folders, even entire hidden partitions that could be forensically imaged. So Guy Major is just one of the tools that we could use for forensic imaging, and this is more for Linux. For Windows, well, Linux and Mac, as you know, they are almost the same. For Windows tools, one that I like that's very simple with very little footprint that would not lead to compromising your investigation or adding to the footprint of the what already exists on the compromised device. It's a very tiny tool. It's free for anyone to use, and you just run the tool and you click on capture. I think it also does capture the paging file as well. And once you have these files saved, you can open them up in a tool of your choice for analysis, whether it be volatility or Autopsy or FTK, Ncase, Cellbrite. So many tools out there. And this is volatility. What we could actually see, if you all can see this slide and the contents and the characters within the screenshot in particular, this was something that I ran to find an instance of the WannaCry ransomware, which is pretty old, but I mean, it's still out there. All right, so this is, I used volatility to perform some memory dump malware analysis using a plugin called PS3. So with volatility, there are many different plugins that you can use. There are maybe over 100 plugins that you can use. And each plugin is a command that would give you different output. So for example, in this one, I've actually used the PS3 command, which actually lists the processes inside of there. And if you look down a bit, right here, it actually says the Wanna decryptor process is running, and that is actually part of the WannaCry ransomware. And if I go up right above WannaDecryptor here by the task scheduler, we can actually see that perhaps it was spawned by the task scheduler, which is linked to explorer.exe, which would have spawned task scheduler, which would have then spawned WannaDecryptor. And that right there is some basic ransomware or ransomware artifact analysis to actually see perhaps what is running, what is infected, where did the infection trace to, which is back to explorer.exe. And we have so many other plugins inside of here where you can even look at connections to actually see perhaps if it would have been Trojanized or associated with a botnet and can get out of our network onto the internet and back to perhaps a command and control device or website or server somewhere out there. And this is a really nice tool for beginners in particular, or people that aren't too familiar with Wireshark. Wireshark is very easy to use, especially if you'd like to capture information. And please, of course, if you decide to try these things, please do so for educational purposes and not for malicious purposes. If you install Wireshark, even at your home network, and you let it run and you let it capture, you start a packet capture. Not for long, maybe about 10 minutes, and you start browsing, log in, enter a couple passwords. It will, you can stop the packet capture, save that packet capture, and then run that packet capture in Network Miner. Network Miner is available for Linux as well as Windows, and instead of having to sift through this information on Wireshark, which would have been so many different filters and it's very time consuming, you import your packet capture into Network Miner and it gives you a very lovely graphical interface where it shows the files that would have been perhaps accessed remotely or downloaded, images, messages, credentials. Of course, maybe not encrypted, but perhaps if you use an encrypted FTP or Telnet, or someone is using some sort of insecure type of communication, this should actually give you a good indication as to what you may have to make someone or bring up at the next security awareness training program and make persons aware of. Right, so Network Miner, there's a free version and there's also a paid version. The free version works well for me. There's also automated PCAP packet capture analysis sites online, like I think it's, I can't remember the name of it. I have it up next anyway. But there are a lot of tools that do automated Wireshark and PCAP analysis. But again, running Wireshark on your network, maybe sometimes you might have to use filters and so on, but please make sure that you have permission to run these things, whether it just be for analysis as part of your blue team or purple team, red team analysis and report. Oh, this is the website that I actually tried to remember. Right, so there's also online automated PCAP analysis using packettotal.com. So you can open up packettotal.com in a browser right now, and you can even try, these are simple things that you can try out and sort of get yourself on the road to, if you're in the red team, get yourself on the road to becoming purple team, or and know or be familiar with some of the blue team tactics. Right, you'll find that there's far more material on red teaming rather than blue. So you will find that inside cybersecurity, which is a niche in itself, forensics and incident response and the blue team is actually a niche within cybersecurity, right? So you are leveling up your skill sets. And I would recommend that anyone inside the red team, even if you just do risk assessments, not even the technical part of it, but let's say that you do auditing, for example, it is a good idea to dabble a bit in some of this as well. All right, so that's really all I have on the tools there. And if you'd like to learn more, there are lots of Rocheston courses that you could register for. I'm sure you can reach out to the Rocheston team for training. They have excellent training online, available everywhere throughout the entire planet. And don't just take my word for it. Go onto the website and look at the modules. Look at what is taught in some of these classes. I am highly impressed by the content that was put together by Haja and the team for these certification courses there. And thank you. That's about it, right? You can find me on LinkedIn and feel free to email me at info@cfsi.co. I'll gladly answer any questions that you all may have. Back to you, Aditya.
Okay, Shiva. Wow, that was quite something. I would say there are a lot of questions, but I think most of them have been answered. I think are they from your team? Some people on the chat. Okay, so they've answered most of the questions. So I don't think I'm going to answer because they asked you the questions because they answered very, very in depth, and it's clear for them to see in writing as well. So they did a very good job answering all of the questions in the chat for all of the participants. So I'm just going to thank you, and I don't think there are any more questions remaining to ask you. So you and your team together have taken care of giving the audience a very informative session covering a very in-depth methods of purple teaming and the best of red and blue team penetration testing. So thank you so much, Shiva. It was a pleasure having you on as always. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. And we look forward to having you with us for our next reinvent. Is there anything you would like to add before we wind up?
No, just thanks to the Rocheston team for having me here yet again, and thanks to my teammates Alex and Jason and Joel and the guys that were responding to everyone on the chat there. Those are my top members in at CFSI. They do a lot of the hard work. So thank you guys for that. Thanks to Ronnie Mohammed for trusting us and partnering with us worldwide, and thanks to everyone that joined for the conference. It was wonderful having to being able to share my knowledge with you all.
Thanks, Shiva. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure having you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.